Hello and welcome to Roundtable. Winter is coming and you may think we need more heat, therefore more fuel, but the European Union's agreed to actually cut its Russian gas consumption by 15% between now and next spring. It thinks it can manage.
We have made a huge step towards securing gas supplies for our citizens and economies for the upcoming winter.
EU members have supported this with the exception of Hungary. Others, including Poland, Spain and Portugal, were sceptical, fearing the cuts could trigger a supply emergency. So is the European Union agreement fair to all the countries in the bloc? Very good to have you along. I'm David Foster. The EU's been rallying its members to save gas and store it for winter after Russia's Gazprom said it would cut flows to Europe through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline by 80%. Germany's Vice-Chancellor Robert Habeck said the EU agreement would show the Russian President Vladimir Putin that Europe remained united in the face of Moscow's latest gas cuts.
Of course, we have to make sure that it is a fast, alert system that is easy to work with. I would also like to say that we have to prepare ourselves internally for less Russian gas, or at some point, no Russian gas at all. If things turn out differently, we will be surprised. But we should no longer be surprised that Putin will turn off the gas tap.
But that pact didn't stop the Hungarian foreign minister from travelling to Moscow to discuss buying more Russian gas. So is Russia's precious resource a threat to the EU's common cause, or indeed its very stability? We are travelling Europe-wide in this one to Bratislava, first of all, and Julius Horvath, Professor of Economics at Central European University in Budapest and Vienna. Just south of Athens in Greece, Denis MacShane, former UK Minister for Europe, and in Warsaw, Joanna Pandera, President at Forum Energii. Julius, I want to start with you. It's baking outside here today. It's going to get hotter. It's dry. We don't really need to worry about fuel bills that much at the moment. But come winter, that's when the real test will be on, right?
Yes, that is correct. And the evaluation, what will happen in the winter, there are large number of differences between different governments and different international organizations. Yeah, so I think that it's everything about the availability of Russian gas and the reaction of the sanctions and things like that. Yeah, so I think we will speak about this today.
And that is when, Denis, the test of individual countries' unity within the European Union membership bloc will be truly tested. Where are the stress points?
Well, the obvious stress points is each country's got a different energy mix. Germany's come out of coal and nuclear, though interestingly I read today a report that all of the German nuclear plants could start going back on grid very quickly. In Britain, I'm not in Britain, but obviously I'm following the British news, the BBC's been going crazy today on a huge spike, feared spike of energy prices as soon as the normal autumn British weather kicks in, with families under real pressure. Now, it's interesting to see whether Britain will play a bit more of a cooperation game or try and do it all by itself. You've got President Macron hosting for dinner tonight, a dinner for MBS. That's the chief guy in Saudi Arabia, de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, and President Macron was meeting the similar chap from Dubai, from the Emirates earlier this week. So everybody is gearing up, and of course we know President Putin is sitting there like a spider, wanting to weaponize first grain, then energy, and there'll be constant, I think, discussion, G7, EU, NATO, with the US, about ensuring he doesn't, as it were, win his war on the back of European citizens' worries over their electricity and their heating.
Joanna, is that where Europe's got to look for alternative energy supplies, places in the Gulf where it might not have the greatest friendship record or respect for the regimes there, but it needs them nonetheless?
So certainly for the next winter, we just need to replace our current directions, mainly Russian. So this is the priority. However, in future, I think it is the biggest energy crisis ever. I really think it does not have anything similar to the crisis of 70s, and everything depends on the next winter and how we will overcome this crisis and what our reaction will be. So I have no doubts that weaponizing, as you said, the fossil fuels is a shock also for entire Europe, and it is lesson learned. And I'm certainly sure that that energy transition will only accelerate in the next years. This winter will be difficult, but the next one will be easier, and energy efficiency renewables is the solution. Of course, well, not everybody country is doing the same.
I will ask the question at the end of this program. If Europe and other countries diversify in such a way that Russian gas is not needed for the short term, could it be that eventually Russian gas is not needed at all? And how could that hurt the Russian economy long term? That's for the end of the program. But I want to play in something. Okay. You're in Poland. I want to play something from Poland's climate minister.
We do not need any limits. 11 countries have some limits when it comes to gas. Poland does not, and there is no need for any limits, as the storage sites are full and we have gas delivered to Poland.
So Poland, they're saying, look, we're okay at the moment, but Hungary's foreign minister off to Moscow saying, listen, you know, on the quiet, can you give us a little bit more gas? Where are the fractures in that part of Europe that you're aware of?
Yeah, so it was the statement made before the Council, and at the Council 2 days ago, all member states agreed for this 15% voluntary gas reduction targets, which is a positive message. Poland got some derogations or some exemption rules, but generally we also reduced now our gas consumption. It fell down by 20% since last year. So it's not that we are not doing anything. So, but of course, you know, the discussion in Poland, political discussion is also heavy. We are in election period, so it is really the hottest topic now, what will happen with energy sources, but not only gas. Actually, coal is now the major topic.
Well, coal we'll talk about when we mention Germany, but okay, so there you mentioned Poland. I asked you also about Hungary, but I'm going to throw that one now to Julius. So the foreign minister of Hungary toddles off to Moscow, basically thumbing his nose at the rest of Europe and saying, Russia, please, please, please give us more gas. Is that something that the EU is probably prepared to sort of ignore because that's all bans Hungary, et cetera, et cetera? We know he does that sort of thing.
Hungary play an independent policy to an extent. Maybe there is also a domestic demand for that. That was also during the Kada era, during socialist time. So, and the Hungarian political elite is after election. So it's a different situation than in Poland. And it's very interestingly that the great allies of Visegrad 4, Hungary and Poland, are now going different ways because they have a principally different opinion about how to behave during this energy and the military crisis in Europe.
What did you make of the fact that, well, Denis mentioned it a short while ago, that Germany is in a position, if it wanted to, although it said it won't, to fire up its nuclear power stations once again? We know it's burning coal, much more than it ever said it would, which may threaten the target of green energy by 2030. But what about the idea that it could go back and start to re-fire up its nuclear powers?
Well, you know, so Hungary also had plans to increase atomic energy in cooperation with Russia. I don't know how these plans are standing today. Maybe they are surely not terminated, but maybe they are kind of paused. But the Hungarian position, of course, officially Hungary is an illiberal democracy, so they follow a different discourse when they speak than typically a political elite of Western Europe. Yeah, and they are more maybe patriotic, or nationalistic, depending on how you want to call it.
Denis, is hypocrisy inevitable in the current climate? I'm thinking about Germany saying no to coal power and then firing up its coal-powered fire stations and, as you suggest, maybe opening up its nuclear world again.
David, hypocrisy? The European Union? Give me a break. I mean, there's 27 countries, each with different energy profiles, different natural sources that matter to them. Poland with all its brown coal, other countries like France with huge nuclear generated electricity. So, of course, I find it extraordinary that actually, at the end of the day, a couple of days ago, they all agreed 50% reduction in energy output. Now, this is an extraordinary United European decision. You cited Poland and Hungary of some statements made a few days ago. They've all come into line. Even Viktor Orban, his chief advisor, resigned after he made some ghastly speech saying that Europeans shouldn't marry with people who weren't European. I mean, it's just typical Orban playing to the gallery. But he made it to the Hungarian minority in Romania, and the Romanians almost broke diplomatic relations with him. You don't come into our country and preach that kind of racist nonsense. The Poles have been told very firmly, if they want to be part of Europe, they've now got to cooperate with European rules on law and justice and the independence of the judiciary. So it's all coming together, and Putin is sitting there, as I say, like the spider, praying that Europe falls apart, and it isn't happening. And I find this one of the most remarkable aspects of this entire energy crisis story. I'm genuinely surprised. I'm as cynical about the EU as anybody else. And actually, we're seeing far more agreement and coming together because Europe is a democratic entity. And Putin hates Europe. He loves Brexit. He wants to destroy and break up Europe. And the Europeans are now saying to Putin, you're not going to do it.
Anna, I'm going to throw this picture up here. It shows the possibility of gas held in storage tanks between October of this year and March of next year. The first one shows if they were at 90% capacity, then it goes down, 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 until round about January, what they describe as a threshold for heightened risk of supply disruptions. In other words, we're running out. And then by March, it's down to 5%. What happens if and when it gets that low? What happens to the unity we're talking about? What happens to people in their homes freezing to death in March?
So I still think that we will not go so far, and there are certainly still more advanced demand reduction programs which we can apply. I think that...
So people could be asked to cut even further?
I think it's not people, because, of course, coordinated on the households level is a big challenge. I think that mainly industry should have been paid for reducing their demand. This is number one issue. I don't see now this discussion going in Poland. And in Poland, actually, industry consumes gas, is a major gas consumer. So more needs to be done on the industry level. And still, if we talk about storage, Polish gas storage is actually full. It's 98%. Of course, compared to other volumes of storage in Europe, is relatively small. So we have, German storages are our biggest one, even if they are not full now. It's still, we can keep at least few months without gas supply.
If we're talking about industrialization, would it be fair to say, and I'm just throwing this out there, so tell me if I'm completely wrong, Joanna, would it be fair to say that countries such as Poland would need their gas for their heavy industries much more than other countries such as perhaps Greece or southern Spain or areas like that? What are the major differences across Europe, if you could pinpoint just 3 or 4 of them? Is that possible?
Certainly, as Denis said, each country has different, not only energy mix, but also consumption patterns or consumption sources, let's say. And I cannot judge it. I know only that if, in example, German economy would collapse because of gas interruption, it would impact entire Europe. So Polish market is very much connected to Germany and also to other markets. So it's not that disaster in one country, we can just eat popcorn and look at disaster in other country and be proud that we are still safe. So I fully agree also with Denis that what is positive and where Putin actually failed is division of Europe. And still, it is surprising that despite heavy political discussions, that the European Union, but actually many countries in the world are united on Russia, against Russia, and on Ukraine united.
But throw this one to you, if I may, Julius, first of all, but anybody's capable of answering it. Would it be fair then to say, if you're talking about unity, that Germany is the weakest link because it has for so many years, particularly under Mutti, under Frau Merkel, built up its reliance upon Russian energy supplies, and it could be, Anna, you're nodding, let's carry on with you. Sorry, Joanna, you're nodding, let's carry on with you for this moment. Could it be that Germany is the one weak link in the chain, or is it beyond that?
I think that for the next winter, we should really keep away from all the, judgment on who is fault on this. However, of course, Poland has a big dispute with Germany on Nord Stream 2 and exactly on gas strategy for Europe and Russian gas. So it will play a role for the next year to come. But for now, I think let's focus on winter and let's work together because this is the most important thing.
Let's hear from Volodymyr Zelensky. He's very keen on Europe getting through this in one piece.
This is enough of an experience to broaden sanctions against Russia, as it is clear to everyone that this is intended Russian price terror against Europeans. Using Gazprom, Moscow is doing all it can to make the coming winter as harsh as possible for the European countries. Terror must be answered. Impose sanctions.
Julius, what the Ukrainian president is saying there effectively is if we stick together, we being Europe, then we will get through this. What do you think about the suggestion that there could be, if not one weak link, possibly Germany, there could be other weak links within the chain that is trying to put the squeeze on Russia?
Well, maybe the weakest link, the most vulnerable countries are Hungary, Slovakia, and Czech Republic. If they face a risk of shortages. There is a study of International Monetary Fund in July 2022, just recently, when they speak that if there is a longer full shutoff of Russian gas, these countries might go to GDP shrinking up to 6%. So I think that is something behind the Hungarian position, this type of ideas, and also. In Hungarian official government press, they constantly basically ridicule the concept of personal sacrifice that governments put on themselves, decrease of consumption of energy. If they can, keep the energy, just find some political solution.
So let me ask you this question. If the countries that you've just mentioned do weaken, how would the rest of the European Union be able to pull them back into line? Or if they weren't prepared to be pulled back into line, what would happen to this pact?
Well, I think that unity of European Union will survive. So I don't think there is any country which will want to continue as British. There is, I think, Hungarians, Orban, if he asks explicitly, he always says, Hungary is a European country and is very, very happy to stay in the European Union. So I don't think that this political issue will be the first one. But the animosity between countries or among countries might grow when each individual country will face some domestic problems. Because don't forget, it is, if you think about the late 1970s and Jimmy Carter, who actually was kind of tried to convince Americans to reduce energy consumption during or after the oil shocks. I speak about late 70s, and he destroyed his re-election chances. So I see also some danger there for a political stability across individual European countries. I see that's maybe more stronger danger than, officially breaking the unity of European Union.
And Denis MacShane, former Europe Minister for the United Kingdom, thinks that's nonsense.
I wouldn't say it's nonsense. I think they're very real. Look, people are going to face huge pressures on, certainly in my country and in other countries, when the electricity bills start shooting up in the autumn. I mean, the big reports today, I'm talking about Britain, of people really facing a massive increase up to £2,000-3,000 a year energy bills. And already we have many poor people who have to choose between heating themselves and feeding themselves, or people who need to warm food to take with medicine but haven't got the heating to do it. Now, that's a problem for the incoming Prime Minister. We're not discussing that here tonight, the fight between Mr. Sunak and Miss Truss, but that will be a huge item on all of the agendas. Britain, for example, is sending an awful lot of gas to the Netherlands, not out of generosity of British-Dutch friendship, but simply because we haven't got any storage capacity left in Britain. We've got all these anomalies all over the place. There's far more interconnectivity, I think. And yes, we may actually be told we've got to drive, I don't know, slightly slower, sort of 80, 90 kilometers an hour maximum. We're told possibly that some nightclubs won't be operating after 10 o'clock in the evening. I've no idea. There may be issues like that. None of them actually are very, very bad for any of our countries. And I think people will want to do that rather than to let Putin sit there sniggering and crowing all over us.
Well, the nightclubs won't be a problem for me. They may be for you, Denis. But I'm wondering if, in fact, there is one country in Europe that's going to come out of this smiling, if you like, and that is France, because of its reliance on nuclear energy. It doesn't need to worry about any of this. The people won't see their bills go up. Am I right or wrong on that?
Well, I would argue that France is in a good position, but France also needs different types of energy for an awful lot of its industry, and that is best supplied. I'm astonished at the amount of gas that France still imports and the consumption per capita in France of gas. It's twice that, say, of Spain or Portugal or Greece, where I am. Now, there may be tensions there when the low-consuming gas importers of Europe are told they've got to take a 15% hit and the big boys aren't. But let's get to that. It's like on the pandemic. We began in a bit of a panic. We sorted it out. I'm old enough, I'm afraid, today, but I'm not young like you, to remember the 3-day week in Britain in the 1970s. And when energy shortages really did so much damage to industry. But we came through it.
Well, the 3-day week, Denis, some argue that's what I'm on at the moment, but I disagree with that. Joanna, I want to ask you a question I threw out there at the beginning of the programme. If everybody finds an independent source for their energy needs, and it isn't Russia, what's going to happen to the Russian economy a few years down the line?
I will reply to this question, but before I would like to comment on France, because
do give us a quick answer, because we've only got about 3 minutes left.
Okay, it will be quick. So let's do not forget that 50% of nuclear capacity is not available at the moment in France. So this is just one comment. And regarding Russian economy, I think that there is now full manipulation about the economic indicators. So I think that the situation will only get worse in Russia. I cannot imagine other way. And of course, for that, we need to completely phase out Russian fossil fuels, because still they earn a lot with energy sale, fossil fuel sales, and it should end as soon as possible. And I cannot imagine that for the future, Russia will be in a good economic shape because of everything what happened over the last 6 months.
Well, I'm wondering if Russia is canny enough to understand that the pressure that it's facing regarding countries finding alternative sources for the fossil fuels will mean that they have to be accommodating when it comes to allowing those countries to get those. And they'll make private, quiet little side deals which will allow them to keep the rubles running in.
I think that generally one of the reasons why this conflict happened this year is exactly the strategy of European Union of phasing out fossil fuels and increasing share of renewables and energy efficiency. For Russia, it's the last moment to act, because in 2-3 years, the impact of Russian fossil fuels on Europe will be much weaker. And this is really important to understand. We need about 2 years to overcome this crisis. And I really hope that we keep united and we will take right decision, because, of course, also in Poland, populace backlash and fight back. And we are talking about coming back to coal, which is unrealistic completely. We have huge problem with coal, which is burned in households, because it was Russian coal. It was removed quickly by government in April. And now we have heavy debate about houses who are heated with coal in households, how they will, survive winter.
We will see. We will see come November, December, January. Listen, thank you very much indeed. I have to go before they switch the lights off and turn the air conditioning off. Simply not because we haven't got the money to pay the bill, but simply because we haven't got the fuel, because it just isn't there. Thank you for coming on the programme from Bratislava, from near Athens, and from Warsaw, and from wherever you happen to be watching this edition of Roundtable. I'll say goodbye rather quickly. Bye-bye.